Hi everybody, how is everybody diddling? I tell you something, this is stressful, right? Paul was like, do you want to do a tutorial? I was like, yes. But this whole live business, filming cameras upside down, oh my goodness, it's been a real learning curve. I'm just putting my gloves on. So I'm going to lift this up gingerly because he's not actually stuck. We are going to have a go at making a trout out of cake. Okay guys, so look, we're going to start by carving some cake. So this is a loaf cake that I baked, and this is going to be the main shape of our fish. This is actually probably a little bit deeper than we need, so I'm just going to kind of cut off the bottom. So when you're trying to do an illusion cake, you know, the key thing really is, for me, is to kind of get the size right. So we're going to go for a trout. Now, trout come in various sizes, but we're going to go for something kind of this big, all right? Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I just want to create that sort of lovely curve that the fish has. So I'm going to kind of start with the overall shape. So when you're sculpting with cake, just go slowly because you can't really put it back, yeah? So just sort of take your time with it. The other thing about sculpting is you need to sort of see it in 3D. So you're not just kind of doing a two-dimensional shape here, you're doing a three-dimensional shape as well. So I can see already that this fish, like, he's way too fat, right? So we're just going to have to take a whole load off. So I'm going to have a lot of waste actually on this cake. To be honest, if I were doing this ordinarily, I would have probably planned my cake size a little bit better because I do hate the waste. So we're just going to kind of carve down until we get to the shape that we're happy with. So the fish is normally higher at its sort of fattest point here, and then it comes down towards the tail. Now you can probably see that there is no tail. Don't worry about that. We're going to add that in with our modelling chocolate in a bit. The head is actually quite flat. So again, I don't want it to protrude too much. So if you're ever attempting a cake like this, my biggest recommendation is to use photographic reference, right? That's what you want to use, because we kind of think we all know what a fish looks like, which, you know, we do, but it's only when you start studying something in detail that you begin to really just sort of notice things, really. Cover your cake in either a layer of buttercream or ganache. Now, I always use ganache. I just much prefer it for sculpted cakes. It just kind of gives me a little bit of structure. Okay, so to cover the cake now, I'm not going to use sugar paste. I'm going to use modelling chocolate. I use modelling chocolate an awful lot. I like it because I like the taste. But also because it gives you a really long working time, which is just fantastic for sculpting. This is actually our one. This is candy clay, which is modelling chocolate that we do at Sugar Street Studios. But obviously, you can use what you can get your hands on, really. And I'm going to sculpt in white. I always tend to sculpt in white. And then colour afterwards. I just find it a lot easier. So I do tend to work on quite big sculpted cakes, which can take me days sometimes. And this is just a lot more forgiving than sugar paste because it doesn't dry or crack. Okay. And the other thing that it does, which you'll see in a moment, is that it blends. Okay, so obviously what we need to get on the end here is a little bit of tail. And this is where modelling chocolate comes into its own because it will blend beautifully, you'll see. Okay, so I'm just going to fashion a tail. And you can see, right, I'm being very basic here with my shapes. It's very much an organic way of cake decorating this, which I kind of get won't suit everybody. But it suits me, I like it. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a tail on there, which is great. So I'm just going to come in and start working on the head, and then we're going to add the other fins on. So the other thing that I would say about this type of cake decorating is that there's no kind of right or wrong, really. It's very much, you know, kind of finding your own way with what's comfy and what your approach is. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to start marking out the face now so that I can kind of see what I'm looking at. So I'm going to go in with the gills. They have a double gill fish here. So we just kind of want to put that in, okay? And I just want to mark out where my eye is going to go. Just want to kind of concentrate on this mouth here. It's looking a little bit like a shark, not a trout. The other thing that you sort of, you want to really, when you're going for an illusion cake, it's really, really important. The first step really is the form, is the design of the thing that you are creating. So yeah, they have these kind of strange, sunken, sort of wizened faces, fish. You know, they're not the most attractive creatures. Let's be honest about it. Sorry. I'm sorry. They have their own beauty. They do have their own beauty, but it's a acquired taste, I guess. So I want to add in some extra detail on the face here because it's still just looking a little bit too flat and not quite right. So I'm just going to build up a little bit of this kind of saggy cheek mouth situation. What I just want to do is put in a little bit of detail around the eye. You normally do get sort of creases and sags around any eye, even human eyes, animal eyes. Okay, so I'm going to make some fins, and again, quite organic shapes here, and I'm just using my fingers just to thin that out. And then we're going to come to the main tail. Now, obviously, I'm doing this like super quickly. But hopefully, actually, you can kind of see that it can come together relatively quickly. And we're not after precision. We're not doing beautiful little faces or straight edges on a wedding cake or any of that stuff, right? We've got the flexibility here. And it's like I say, it's a very different way of cake decorating, but it's great. It's a proper blending. For me, it's a proper blending between cake and art, which is why I personally love it so much. Okay, so let's go in and kind of create a little bit of movement here on the tail. Again, there's a sort of very mild sort of distinction from where the muscle of the fish finishes and then the tail area begins. So we're just going to do that by putting in some wiggly lines. The thinner this is, the better it's going to be. So kind of take the time to thin that out. Trying to sort of push the lines up so that I just get a few more demarcations in that. So look, we want to put some scales into this little guy here. This is a lizard skin impression mat. Now, a lizard skin has two different types of print. This kind of slightly more rectangular one, and then this which looks more like a sort of regular fish scale. So I'm just going to use that part because that's what we're going to need. And all I'm going to do is just work my way around this fish, pressing in just to give me that impression, okay? So let's just move on to colouring this chappie, shall we? I am going to use an airbrush for this. You could paint him. You could totally paint him with dust colours, mixed with alcohol. But I wanted to airbrush him because I like the look that it gives, and I think it kind of works with something like this. But if you don't have an airbrush, you can certainly do this by hand. Now this is chocolate, so I can't use water-based airbrush paints on these. I need to use ethanol-based airbrush paints. They allow you to airbrush onto chocolate and it dries instantaneously. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually, for this cake, so these are all Spectrum Flow colours, all ethanol-based colours. And for this cake, I thought it'd be fun to use pearlized colours, sparkly ones. So in here is silver and mother of pearl mixed together. Trout have this beautiful coloration where they have like a whole myriad of colours going on actually. So the bottom is kind of silvery grey with a slight greeny hue, and then the top has this sort of greeny look to it, and then you've got that sort of very distinctive pink stripe in the middle. I'm just going to kind of go along the top edge now. All right, I'm going to go in with a slightly darker green. So when you're airbrushing, you want to kind of consider areas of shade, where's slightly darker. All right, now let's go in with a little bit of pink. Now you can see at the moment that the colours kind of look quite, what's the word I'm looking for? They look quite bright, I suppose. They look a little colourful. We're going to dirty this down. We're going to dirty this down in a moment, so don't fear. But I just want to get those kind of main coloration in. Okay, so what have I got going on in here? So I just want to add, I want to kind of make this a little bit darker and a little bit muddier now, okay? Because it's kind of day glow trout going on here, isn't it? It's day glow. It's a bit bright. So in here I've got some sage green and I've got some black, okay? You can see, now we're getting dirty. Now we're getting dirty. And again with shading, you don't just want to go straight in with a black necessarily. You know, just tone it up. Because otherwise it will just sort of look like it's been dipped in black around the edges, which is not necessarily the look that you want to go for. If you hold your airbrush at an angle where you've textured it, it will pick up the print. Can you see that? So as I'm looking at him, my instinct is to put a little bit more kind of latte brown on him. He's a little green and pink for my liking at the moment. All right, feeling a little happier with this now. It's just bringing those other colours together. So he still needs dirtying up to me, this trout. So I'm going to swap now to a brush. Just going to put on a little bit more here. So in here I've got some petal dust, I've got some brown, and I've got some black. And I'm just going to mix the two together. And hopefully you can see as the brush sort of rubs in that it's picking up that scale. So what we need to do is we just need to give this chappy an eye, because he's a little bit eyeless at the moment. I am just going to go in with the airbrush paint, and I'm just going to use a small brush, and I'm just going to kind of paint his eye in. I do this quite a lot. Go back in using my airbrush paints with a brush, because you know there are just some areas that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with using the actual airbrush machine. So you can do that. Yeah, but finally what we want to do is we want to add those really distinctive spots that trouts have. I am going to be using a nail tool for this, actually. It's like a dotter. I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but I don't know what it is. And this coloration happens right through to the tail as well. Fish are slimy and shiny and shiny and slimy, so we want to recreate that, okay? So I'm going to put a great big generous spraying of confectioner's glaze over him. So guys, you have been so amazing. Just unbelievably awesome. I was terrified to do this. I don't mind telling you. My first Facebook Live, and you've just all been amazing. So thank you.